Let me.
And I'm glad you had that able to. That's perfect.
Okay, let me stop sharing and find it and put it up.
I found it as well. Did you find it, or do you want me?
Yep, I got it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, here we go. Awesome. So one of the things, I know we had a discussion last time about, just kind of reflecting on 2020, what worked, what didn't work, what should we change, do we maintain the subgroup structure or not? So some of the things that we discussed last time, and I'm just repeating them just for confirmation with everyone, is that, we like the kind of the format of the subgroups, meaning like we broke out the topics and had folks go off and have sort of a sub discussion that got brought back to the larger discussion. I think obviously everybody said also that it was good to have the full discussion with the full task force. So subgroups really role is to serve up the material to be discussed and potentially line up the different presentations, but the various discussions should happen with the larger subgroup. So so that was one comment. The other one was to have a dedicated writer that would join us right from the beginning, and there are different ways that we can fund that. And I can give you an update that Diane and Angie through Office of Broadband Development are looking through that, and we'll have more updates on that piece as well. But that was a good idea, so that we can have that information up front, and then potentially even create a draft of the document earlier in the year that we can continue to refine and modify as we go along. So when we get to the end of the year, we're having more of the meaty discussions on the recommendations and not so much crammed for time on actually working on the document itself. So that was another feedback that came back. And then the other pieces were, we made a list of topics that we wanted to tackle, and we took notes of that. I think Diana did a really nice job in putting that together. And then as we were going through and identified the 3 subgroups, and I'll cover those here in a minute, we also took some of the topics that were said we needed to be discussed, and we put them under each subgroup. So what we thought would be useful and good use of time for us now is to kind of look at the subgroups, make sure we have alignment around the subgroups, then the different topics that the different subgroups have been assigned, and if we put something in a specific spot, we can give you some of the rationale why that's there. Now, this is not to say that we can't move things around and say this belongs to another one, or nope, this is not what we meant, etc. So we'll do that, so then we have good alignment on the subgroups and the assigned topics under the subgroups. And then after that, we will look at Diane asked for, your preference 1, 2, 3 on the the 3 subgroups. And good news is I think we have a good spread, and maybe a couple of things to move around, but we do have a good spread of folks that said this is my first or second preference. And I think we'll be able to accommodate most first preferences. Maybe we'll let the team self-nominate who the chair should be for that subgroup. So that will be kind of the work here in the next 20 minutes or so with the group. So with that, Steve, George, I know you have your hand up real quick. Maybe we'll hit on a comment you might have, and then get into the pieces.
Teddy, I was just wondering, since it sounds like we're still going to be doing virtual and in the subcommittee format, is it possible for the subcommittees to share their meeting, notices? Because there were times when it would have been nice to just be able to observe, perhaps not actively participate, but hear the conversation and get a better understanding of some of the issues. I have a real passion for a couple of items here, but had to pick one as a priority. So just a thought, if something's not there, but
one thing we could do, I mean, last year, obviously we were all kind of learning through it, right? We were having each of the groups sort of present the feedback, right, or not the summary of the discussions. Maybe what we could do is, instead of having all three groups do that at each meeting, is to just dedicate one meeting for one group, right, and then maybe have more expansive, have a good conversation, right? Like, so what was discussed in the group, kind of bring that up, and then the whole task force gets involved in the discussions of that specific subgroup. That way you sort of have a little bit of an insight to that, and then also and also kind of have the opportunity to chime in as well. And then the other thing also is, I don't know that the subgroups are closed off, right? I mean, if maybe we make the meeting times and whatnot more widely spread for everyone, so that way if you have you want to join, you could still do that. I mean, I'm just speaking off the top of my head, but that's a good point. Mark, maybe you have a comment.
I just noticed Diane put something in the chat about the situation with the subgroups. If we have too many people and create a majority, then we have to do public notice and do all of that. And maybe she wants to comment more on that too. I don't know. I just saw it in there. I thought I should probably bring it up, considering what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is Diane. Anytime there's a majority of the task force present at a meeting, it's a public meeting, so we have to put out notice at least 24 hours ahead of time and an agenda and make that a public meeting.
Okay, that's a good point, but maybe we can. Okay. I mean, that's something to keep in mind, but we can work through that, I think.
This is Yvonne. Another alternative might simply be to record the subcommittee meetings and make those recordings available to the rest of the task force to review if they choose to.
Yeah, certainly an option. Micah?
That's exactly what I was going to say. So Yvonne was on the same sheet of music. And being that we got teams that could coordinate them, you can, as we're recording this one, you can make them available. So another option.
Okay. Steve Fensky?
If you record them, whoever records will have to get the data to Diane or the OBD so they can keep it, because it becomes subject to Data Practices Act. And it would need to be public.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Teresa?
Can we simply just share the meeting notes afterwards? Like if you have a meeting on Tuesday, whoever's the chair, type the notes and just share the notes instead of trying to share the entire meeting with the back and forth?
Yeah, I think that's certainly an opportunity. I think where Steve was coming though is like, you might want to participate. So maybe a combination of, if we do recordings, we have to share the recordings, definitely take the notes. Those could also be made available. And then I think one way to do it is also, if you want to attend a subcommittee meeting, is to let the chair of that subcommittee know that you want to attend that meeting. And then that way we just kind of make sure that we monitor whether, we've reached that majority or not, and make sure that we don't cross that threshold. That could be one way. Teresa?
Sorry about that.
No worries. Steve Georgie?
Yeah, having served on the school board before, if there was a committee meeting and I was not on the committee, I could attend the committee meeting and not participate. So again, I don't know that we would have a concern of getting 7 people attending committee meetings on a regular basis, but I don't want to get into having to record and all its data and all of that. I just think that it would be nice to know when other committees are meeting, and if you had a real interest, you can observe just like anybody else. But if it's we got to establish a bunch of new rules, then I guess we won't do that.
Teddy, you're on mute.
You got to put myself on mute. No, what I was going to say is I agree with you, Steve. I don't think we want to make it cumbersome or difficult. So I think we can find a way around it and make it more simplistic, right? With a request or something like that. But I heard it. I got you, and we'll note it, and we'll kind of maybe put some guidelines on how we can do this. Okay, Diane, do you want to share your screen again?
Yeah, I'll try again. It wasn't letting me see what you can see, and I couldn't tell what.
Try one more time. If not, I can. Oh, there we go. That's perfect.
Is that it? Okay.
Yep. Okay, so here's the three subgroups we came up with. So, and I'll kind of walk through each of them and then talk a little bit about the nuances of kind of what was slightly changed from the one we had the discussion. So this concept of unserved and underserved, and when do we get to reach 100% of our goal, 2022 and 2026? What would it take to do that? That was one that was submitted to the group, to the discussion last time. One thing we added slightly in here, and that makes the scope of this subgroup a little bit bigger, obviously, is any preliminary discussions around funding, right? So if there's, obviously, this is the year for appropriations and budgets and all that kind of stuff, but usually, like we did last year, there could be something that happens in the recommendation in sort of the alternative year. So, you know, and also if we're going to make some other recommendation, maybe not in the end of 2021, but the end of 2022, for the next budget, this would be the subgroup that could handle that. So that's where we added that component of the funding. This makes it a meatier topic for this group. Based on all the different topics that were brought up, the LTD broadband overview to the larger task force, but obviously this group could help coordinate that. Satellite or broadband progress, you know, potential speakers could be Viasat or SpaceX. And then also the MnDOT initiatives with respect to Internet of Things. And, you know, Commissioner Keller's doing a lot of things in that area, and having you potentially the commissioner or somebody from MnDOT come and speak to us about some of the work and some of the broadband needs and potential solutions they might see with partnerships and whatnot. That could be another topic that we felt fit into this, the work of this subgroup, or at least the organizational work of this subgroup. So that was one. The second one was the speed goal one. And, you know, we've had this discussion on and off, especially when we're finalizing the document last year. Speed goals still appropriate? Do they need to be changed? Symmetrical, all that kind of stuff. This was here, but a more immediate need is also the mapping. So the contract with Connected Nation runs out at the end of this year. What happens with mapping in following years? Continue the same, change something, any kind of recommendations around that? So putting these two together, mapping and speed goals, seemed like, again, made it a nice comprehensive list of things to tackle in this area. So potential topics that we could have here is different providers coming in to talk about speed goals and where they see the trends going, and also what's the implications with symmetrical, so we can be a little bit more educated on, is there additional cost? You know, is there additional work? I mean, what are some of the barriers, challenges, maybe potential opportunities and all that? So that was one topic that kind of falls under this area. Then a couple of presentations from organizations like MICE to be able to come to this group. Cable Labs was another one. Electric utility broadband, which, you know, we had a presentation from My Energy today, but we could have others from GRE and others that could present going forward. And again, this would be the subgroup making this recommendation going forward. Also, last year we touched on mapping through crowdsourcing. So it'd be interesting to get an update on how that work is going and any recommendations and potential things, that, especially as we talk about mapping in the future, where does that fall under? And then the last one was obviously the FCC has now made it a priority. They've gotten the funding on their Digital Opportunity Data Collection Act, or Broadband Data Act, which was all kind of being one and the same. The two different things becoming being one and the same, which is how do they change some of the mapping rules. So having someone from the FCC come and give us an update on where that stands. We'll work through that and see if we can have somebody available to come speak to us at some point in the year on this topic. So that would squarely fall under, you know, the mapping and speed goal area. And then the last subgroup is on accessibility, affordability, and then anything around educational challenges. And obviously it's a big concern, the educational piece, but it was under this accessibility and affordability piece that we wanted to tackle. especially this concept of affordability and what's happening, what are programs out there, what are organizations out there trying to tackle this. Also the federal level, there's been some funding that should be made available through the FCC around this whole subsidizing costs potentially. So those all could be topics that could be tackled under affordability. So there could be a number of presenters here, but this is where we would look to this subgroup to be able to bring the right presenters here. On digital inclusion, also suggestion made about the National Urban League and having that organization come and present to this group would be good. Update on tribal lands, progress made, or where there's not been progress, and is there anything that this task force needs to be aware of as we make recommendations in the future? Also, an update from the state demographer would be good. ARC, Minnesota Broadband Needs for Disability and Employment Rehabilitation, another topic to look into. The American Connection Project, which we tackled today with Tina May, came in and updated that on some of the work that's happening around accessibility. And then, what needs do entrepreneurs have when it respect to broadband, right? And that really speaks to some of the work that DEET's doing today. And, if you're looking to boost small businesses, potentially, specifically even in rural communities, what are some of the needs there? What could broadband do, not do? What kind of speeds are required? Those are types of things that would be interesting to tackle under this topic. So these were the 3 subgroups that kind of put all the information together that was thrown out from the group last time and organized in such a way so it could be tackled. Again, this is not that the subgroup would just have a discussion and just come up with a recommendation. It's more of what should this task force hear about, who should we bring forward to talk about some of these things, and then as we get a little later in the year, we make recommendations. The key would be, okay, here's some initial recommendations that the subgroups can throw out. Then the rest of us can shoot darts at it and then continue to mold and update as we go along. So, like I said earlier, having a dedicated writer, that's something that was discussed a little bit. Having time to review the documents a little bit earlier in the year, which the dedicated writer should help with that. Those were a couple of suggestions that we're trying to incorporate. And then potential venues when the virtual piece is finally lifted, or hopefully lifted in the second half of the year. Mark Johnson had said, school venue potentially could be hosted there. Tribal lands, another option. Comcast with inclusive of a tour. MICE update, we talked about that in one of the topics up there, but with a 511 tour. And then something around, agriculture areas and how those are being impacted by, availability or lack of broadband. So I believe this sort of had captured holistically everything we talked about last time. So at this point, before we get into the assignments and all that, any comments, questions, concerns, or things that potentially got missed from our discussion last time? Not hearing any, and I'm not seeing any hands raised, so that's good. I think I did say Diane did a nice job capturing everything last time, so I think everything was there. So with that, I know Diane, you had a little bit of that chart that had preferences of the various task force members to be on the various subgroups. Maybe we can pull that up. Again, this is not finalized, so I think we'll just kind of show you where it's landing, and then after this meeting, I've already started kind of mapping it out a little bit, but we needed to finalize a couple of preferences. I think Nolan, we're just waiting one for you, but he said, oh, so no preference. Okay, that makes it easy on us. So I think we'll have everyone, and I think we'll have them assigned, but you can see here, first, second, and third. Like I said, the good news about this one is there's ones in each column, so that's great. That makes the job much easier. And other than one or two, we may have to move over here. I think by the end of this week, we should be able to send out and say, here's what the subgroups look like. Each of you will sort of, will get an email, all of us will get an email with kind of this information, and then if you disagree and you strongly feel like you should be in another subgroup, just let Diane and I know, and then we can make sure that we can move folks accordingly. And then the goal would be obviously for the subgroups to meet, and maybe I will work with Diane to help you coordinate maybe a first quick meeting. And the output of that meeting will probably just be who's the chair for that meeting. And again, I think we were all on the task force last year. The chair's job is really to coordinate some of the meetings and then do the report outs when we get together as a larger group. So it's not over too much of a burden, but it's helpful to have a single voice speak to that usually. Any comments or concerns on this? Okay, like I said, within the week, we should be able to send out a note saying, here's the assignments. If you have any issues, let us know. And then before the next task force meeting, maybe we'll try to get a quick meeting organized with those on these new subgroups. Okay, that went a lot faster than I thought. Okay, so that's the majority of what we had on the agenda today. Steve Georgie?
Teddy, I'm just curious how or what was done to distribute the task force report, because everything's virtual up at the Capitol. Was there some kind of a formal notice, or how was
Sure.
that?
Good question, Diane. Maybe you can give us an update there as far as the document was ready and finalized. What happened after that?
We had requested paper copies, but we were told by Deed's print shop that there's nobody there and nobody's doing anything by print anymore. So Devin Beaudry distributed an electronic version to every legislator and then to the governor's office. So John Kelly in the governor's office received it, I know for sure. And then I also sent it to the legislative reference library, so it's on file there now. And they printed out their own copy because I think they keep 2 print copies. And then if they've posted it now, it should be available online. And then we have it on the website.
Good question, Steve.
We did not issue a press release. Prior task forces have sometimes done that. It was a busy week at Deed, and we didn't want there to be confusion that it was a Deed product because it's a task force product. So Deed did not issue a press release.
Okay. So that covers all the topics. So any other topic or comment or question that the task force has or wants to make at this point in time? Okay. Okay, so now is the time for any other business from anyone on the meeting. So even outside of the task force members, if anybody wants to make a comment or make a statement, you can put yourself off mute and be able to do so. But for just logistical purposes, if you have Teams and you could raise the hand, I can call on you that way. It'll be much easier. If you don't have Teams, just go off mute and we'll try to manage accordingly. So for anyone not on the task force that wants to make a public statement. Just waiting for the uncomfortable 10 seconds to make sure that we get everybody's voice in, 10 seconds forever. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone, or nobody's coming off mute, no hands. So with that, I want to thank everybody for, taking the time to be on the meeting today, and the comments and everything else, for responding back. I think we have a good spread and we have a good way to be organized for this year. And again, probably there will be a subgroup meeting here before the next task force meeting, but we'll get in the cadence of getting the right topics up and having a more fulsome discussion on the various pieces that we outlined. So with that, I want to thank everybody for the time, and we'll give you, 33 minutes back in the day.